Good afternoon. Welcome everyone to Austin ISD's boardroom for the joint subcommittee meeting. Today's meeting is being broadcast live on AISD TV, channel 22 on Spectrum and channel 99 on AT&T Uverse. As the board president for Austin ISD, I will serve as today's presiding officer. I call the meeting of the joint subcommittee to order at 11:38 a.m. And can we just take a moment and go around and y'all can introduce yourselves? Start with Commissioner Shea.
Hi, Travis County Commissioner Precinct 2, Bridget Shea.
Ryan Alter, Austin City Council, District 5.
Pilar Sanchez, Travis County Health and Human Services County Executive.
Edna Butts, Austin ISD, Intergovernmental Relations and Policy Oversight.
Hi everyone, Vanessa Fuentes, Austin City Councilwoman. I was a proud member of this committee last year. I'm not technically on this committee this year, but given the topics we all will be discussing today, I decided to crash the party.
You're always welcome.
Glad you can join us, Councilmember Fuentes. Good morning, I'm Allison Alter, Council Member representing District 10. Thank you.
And I'm Jeff Trevelyan, County Commissioner of Precinct 1.
Thank you.
And I'm Trustee Zapata for District 2.
Great, and I'm Arthi Singh, Austin ISD Board President. Again, welcome. So we don't have anyone signed up for public comment today. So I just want to make sure, right? No one's here for public comment? Okay. So our first item is the approval of the minutes for February 17th, 2023 for that meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Approval. All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner Shea and a second by Trustee Zapata. Is all those in favor of approving, raise your right hand. All right, the motion passes unanimously. So the next item on the agenda is the joint subcommittee purpose and planning. And we've set aside about 45 to 50 minutes for the members that are here in this room to I'm sorry, I forgot. Councilman Jose Velasquez, are you on Zoom? Okay. He'll be joining us on Zoom shortly, I believe.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay, there you go. Hello, welcome. So we wanted to talk a little bit, we have some new members on this board, including myself. And this group really brings a variety of strengths and passions and interests. We all have this common goal of making our community really a great place to live and work. And we each ran for office with a certain purpose and certain goals in mind. And now with each of our entities get to spend a couple of hours together every few weeks and really want us to take a moment to reflect as we are in a different time period. We're coming out of COVID. We have, like I said, three or four new members of the joint subcommittee. We're in a certain political environment. There's a lot going on. And we have a really unique opportunity, I think, with this joint subcommittee to do some powerful work. And if it's okay with you all, I would love to take some time for us to really think about what the purpose is of the joint subcommittee. We do have bylaws, of course, so there is a purpose written out. But for us, what would that look like? What topics do we want to focus on? And what level of engagement do we want to have on these different topics? So I want to just start off with thinking about what the purpose is of the joint subcommittee. And I thought it might be helpful to have some historical perspective for those of you that have been on this committee for a while, and just share, what do you see have been some of the highlights and the ways that this committee has served a good purpose. So I'll open the floor to anybody who would like to speak. Yes, Councilmember Alter.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. And if I could just add by way of background, that as the folks who've been on the committee the longest for each respective group, plus the chair for AISD, Commissioner Shea, myself, and President Singh met and did some initial brainstorming, and really we're all in agreement that this was an opportunity that we wanted to take advantage of for us to rethink and to think creatively about how we want to use this forum, what the best use would be for this forum. And I think I'm really excited today to talk about what we've accomplished as a committee because, as many of you may know, the county determined the second tranche of their ARPA dollars yesterday, and a good piece of that had to do with childcare resources. And I'll let Commissioner Shea and Commissioner Trevilian speak to the details. But part of that work that led to identifying what we needed to fund came out of work that this subcommittee did. We had a working group on childcare. Commissioner Trevilian, myself, Trustee Boswell at the time were on that. And this was before the city had our ARPA dollars as well. It was during COVID. We were really trying to understand how we could support the childcare area. The city, we were able to dedicate $11 million in ARPA. The county did a first tranche, and then they just did a second tranche. And AISD has also been looking at how they can support childcare. And I think that's one example of where we've worked together well in the past.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Of course. Do you mind pressing your button, though?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you say a little bit more about where that money went to? Well, what did y'all do? I mean, that's great. That's a big investment. So what did that go to?
From Travis County?
The total money that y'all were talking about, the four?
Yeah, it was 52 million, and I can't recite it all from memory, but a substantial amount went to workforce development and a particular focus, and Commissioner Trevilian can speak more to this. And actually, if it's all right, if you don't mind, I'd like to speak a little bit to the general purpose of this meeting, and then we can get into more details on how we voted to allocate the federal funds yesterday. But from our conversation as the people who've been on the Joint Committee the longest, I think there was a general sense that there's huge value in having elected officials from each of our jurisdictions gather on a somewhat regular basis, and that we should try and maximize the impact of that. None of us has a lot of time in our schedules. We're all going to too many meetings and juggling too many things. And so for this rare opportunity when our three overlapping institutions, which it was formed years ago because we are the largest governmental entities in the region, whose work overlaps whether or not we even see it. We serve much of the same population. We deal with many of the same crises and issues. And I think we can be much more effective if we're super intentional about trying to figure out how can we best either pool our resources, support each other, or pursue policies that really magnify the opportunity that we have as the largest overlapping governmental entities. So that was kind of the context for us wanting to have this initial discussion where we can just sort of brainstorm on what could we do that would be most impactful. And I don't mean to take anything away from the work that we've done in the past. We started several years back, and again, there's lots of turnover, but that newest configuration, probably 5 years ago, maybe longer than that, decided that affordable housing was the major issue and that we all had pieces to contribute to the puzzle. And so there was a big emphasis on affordable housing. So there's been really important work that's been done in the past, but I think it's valuable to take this time at the top of this meeting to just, I don't know if we're calling it a brainstorming session or what, but to try and get ideas from folks about what they think we should be focusing on that can be most impactful with the power of of our three governmental entities having the chance to sit down and work together and look at addressing problems in our region.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well said. Some other things, good things that I've seen come out of this committee has been some support for our parent support specialists. I know there have been conversations here about that. That is something that's a great value to our community. And also the community schools, right, Commissioner Trevilian?
Right.
That's something I've heard about. Would you like to share a little bit about how that emerged from this?
A number of things. I think that it's important to recognize that public policy doesn't happen in a vacuum or impact an entire community in a vacuum. So that you have the policymakers from the school district, the city, and the county working together, who are generally should be working on the most important community-related problems across the region. I think it's important and it's powerful for us to meet together. You know, when you look at one of the largest landholders in the city, it's AISD. When you look at all the dollars that come, a lot of federal dollars that come in and can address the problems of underserved communities, you've got the city. When you have got a group like the county looking at the issues of people who have been forced out of the city because of affordability. So when we sit together and work together, we can talk about, because for us, we don't have a workforce unless we are aligned with our school district and we are making sure that there are workforce dollars available. And I think that in many instances, like the pandemic, it was the city and the county working together to make sure that we were able to serve those parts of town that have been underdeveloped from the standpoint of economic development and access to healthcare clinics. And I think that our coming together served a lot more communities that have historically been underserved. When you look at the top categories where we dedicated our dollars yesterday, one area was eviction prevention, which was over $5 million. Another area was food access, just over $4 million. Another area, child care assistance, about $3.5 million. Then we also looked at workforce development because we know how critical that is, and I hope that it is the work of bodies like these who figure out how we can bring workforce development back into the schools. You know, when I grew up, we had a shop system where a lot of folks went to school a half day, worked a half day, but they were taught how to rebuild engines, they were taught HVAC, et cetera. How can we build a better bridge to make sure that all of our kids who are interested in work have access to do so? And then we also focused on infrastructure improvements, including water and wastewater development. So a lot, and one thing that I think the city is probably most interested in is the jail diversion center that we dedicated $8 million to. So there are a lot of things that I think we all have an interest in, and hopefully as we work together we can figure out how we can be even closer partners and heal and build the parts of the community that have historically suffered because they're in the wrong zip code area.
Got it. Thank you, Commissioner Trevelyan. Yes, Councilmember Alter.
Thank you. I wanted to add also that we've been working with our staff across the different organizations with respect to developing our resilience hubs and the areas that Commissioner Trevelyan mentioned with respect to COVID. Things also happen outside of this committee because of the relationship. So I think a lot of the food support that the city did in conjunction with the school district came out of conversations and knowledge that came from being in this committee, even if we didn't meet and arrange to do that. So I think it's valuable, both what we do in this setting, but also the relationships that get built and the knowledge that we have about each other's organizations and how we're working and what we're contributing. The prime time, the parent support specialists, victory tutorial, that work that we do, the internships, all of those things have been really important. And there are opportunities all over the place, workforce development, affordable housing. We also worked on the gun violence prevention work as well.
So thank you to you, both of you, for sharing, you're kind of whetting our appetite into some of the topics that we could be exploring in this committee. So I thought it would be fun to sort of mix things up a little bit and spend a little time just, I think everybody has some Post-its near you. Take a moment individually to think about what topics, whether it's, housing, childcare, whatever those big topics are. And feel free to just write them down on your Post-its. I'll give you guys about 3 minutes to do that. And then once you've done that, you can put them on this big board here, whenever you're ready, and then we'll group them together and see what different topics emerge. And Councilmember Velasquez, we'll just ask you to kind of you can help us when we get to the discussion portion of it. So, sound
Madam
good?
Chair.
He can text me his Post-its. I'll put them on here.
Perfect, thank you. Feel free to text your colleague, Councilmember Alter.
And Madam Chair, I just, we had emailed to us this morning the revised spreadsheet that lays out all of the funding allocations that we made yesterday. Like I said, it was 52 million, so I don't have to remember them off the top of my head. I'm happy to share them with whomever can send it out to this group, whatever's the most effective way to do that. I can just forward that email so that everybody has that list.
Okay, is that something that one of the staff members might be able to assist with?
Sure, I'm just asking who I should send it to. Edna? Perfect.
Oh, yeah, send it to Edna, yes. Okay, so I'll give y'all 3 minutes.
Everything works well when we work with Edna.
And you're wanting us to just lay out ideas that we'd like to work on over the next year or so
Yes.
as the joint subcommittee? Okay, thank you.
So one topic per Post-it, and then you can just put it on that big board as you finish.
How many am I limited to?
No limit,
Careful.
although quality, not quantity.
Green.
Okay, we'll get it to you, okay, all right, okay, sounds good.
Okay, so I saw so many great ideas here. Thank you all very much. So I'll share with you a little bit of what our categories emerged. So it seems like some of the biggies were workforce development. Raise your hand if you said something about workforce. Yeah, a lot of people talking about workforce, career and technical education, job training and placement. I have this sort of workforce adjacent place here, which I put this one, which is, or actually, no, I think Trustee Zapata did, which was increase the salaries for PSSs to $20 an hour to kind of match what the city is doing, yes. Also, incentives to bring teachers to the district and just general staffing challenges, which I think all three of our entities are probably experiencing right now. So they're kind of related there. Another big area, of course, is housing. So probably everybody put something about housing, affordable housing for public employees. Oops, this one had to go here. And yes, affordable housing. Then we have a bunch with childcare. So you can see a lot of people talk about childcare and preschool. And then related to that is after school and summer camps as well, so our kids have a safe and educational place to be when they're, their parents are working. Mental health is a big issue. Diverting those with mental illness from jail to treatment. Who said that? It's a good one. Thank you, thank you. Yes. Is there anything that either of you would like to say to kind of expand on that?
Well,
Yeah.
well, yesterday we voted 8 million, I think, in change, to do a pilot program along those lines with integral care using
Oh,
I'm sorry. Using a couple of facilities that are already in place, and that can relatively easily accommodate a population whose main issue is mental health, that are now going into our jails.
Yep.
And it would include both the housing component for 30 to 90 days. There'd be one portion of it that would be emergency crisis, and then another that would include residential for 30 to 90 days, with services to support people transitioning out of that. We had Dr. Strakowski from Dell Medical lead a pretty large task force looking at this issue, and his recommendation was that you needed to have this kind of alternative place with the services, because if you didn't have the services, you were just creating another jail.
Got it.
And so we're gonna be piloting that, starting fairly soon, because we allocated this federal money to that pilot. And we'll be looking for partners, because we need to partner with lots of entities in the community, including the city, the hospitals, Central Health, and lots of others.
Oh, that's great.
Artie?
Yes.
If I think it's really important to recognize that we do need the programming, but we have seen programs that have worked at the county. There was a DWI court that was run by Judge Bennett, and people would be sent to detox. They would be given a counselor. They would be put into 12-step programs, and all of those things were good. But if you don't have housing and you don't have job training, you don't provide the stability that one needs. You don't want to divert someone to the street.
That's right.
You want to divert them to a bed and divert them to services. And this would lay a foundation for building out that infrastructure that we've got part of. And I think we've got a group of judges in Travis County that would work with us, but we have to build out the entire infrastructure in order for it to be sustainable.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So I'm going to mention a few of the other things here. Oops. So I forgot to put a little circle around this one. This is land strategy and park space. So that's what this little guy is right here. We had a couple people talk about drugs and addressing the opioid crisis, gun violence prevention, and then we have, of course, the other category, which included things like more coordination of multi-generational supports, sustainability, healthy eating and food insecurity, emergency preparedness and resilience. Actually, 2 people talked about resilience hubs, and community schools. So I'd like to take a moment to invite anybody to expand a little bit more on anything in here that they shared, or if you have other ideas that haven't been mentioned yet. Do you want to expand on it?
Sure. We were talking a little bit about shared use spaces, our parks, and just opportunities. And then I'm kicking myself because I can't remember what the example was, but I had someone in the district who came to me and said, we have a school and we're allowed to use the park for whatever hours, but then I think they said on the weekend we can't use it. And this is when, we would like to use it the most, right? So just making sure that we are properly using our spaces, and vice versa. There's a city space that, AISD could benefit from. I think our open spaces are good opportunities for sharing and collaborating. So.
Thank you. And I forgot to ask, does Councilmember Velasquez have anything as well, or did he text you?
I got it.
Oh, you got them? They're already covered here? Okay, good. Can they hear you? I think so. Can they hear me?
I don't think he can hear you. He can hear everybody else.
Okay, I'm gonna turn on your mic if you don't mind. Okay, I'll just talk louder.
Archie?
Yes.
When I was on the city council in the early 90s, we did a joint use initiative that came out of John Sharp's performance review and recommendations for how communities could collaborate on facilities that would be jointly used by the community. And I thought it was a brilliant recommendation. We passed it. I had understood at that time that it was the school district's policy to, when building new schools, create park space that would be available for the whole community. So I think it would be good to understand, has that policy changed? And just what the status is, like if a park is closed on the weekend at a school, that doesn't make any sense. So it'd be just good to know what that policy is.
Well, you know, a couple of Sharp's policy recommendations were put in place with Pickle and then with Overton. And what the policy was at the time, if I recall, was anytime the school wanted to build a new school building, that it would collaborate with the city to determine whether that was a good place to put a rec center. And when you look at Pickle and Virginia Brown, when you look at Overton and the Turner space, it was designed to, if the city puts a larger recreation space there, then that's less of an investment that the school district has to make. And if the school district puts a commercial kitchen there, that is less of an investment that the city would have to make in that type of facility, and I think that it has worked spectacularly well to the point where we have been asking school districts in the county to give the same consideration, whether there is a space in a new school where we can put and extend the opportunity to build a community center or a rec center or whatever you call it. But that, I think, has a real opportunity to make our schools community centers and centers of activity for the entire neighborhood.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, can I have Trustee Zapata?
So I put my first one as workforce because I think there's been investment for years on some partnerships that we mentioned earlier, like Prime Time and Parent Support Specialist, and summer youth employment is another investment that we do. All three of us have been doing it for years, over 20 years. But it's kind of been like its own little thing. It happens in the summer, and then the staff start all over. Well, you know, when I started here, I was like, how do we integrate more? How do we use that program more to help our students? That the summer youth employment would be the stepping stone at 9th grade to begin to explore a job and what that world of work looks like. So by the time they're in the 12th grade, they already have an idea of what work is, what kind of jobs, skills they know or don't know, and what their dream job is gonna be after high school. So then they're more informed and prepared because they have taken ownership of their school since that first job experience, so that they know if they're gonna go to a 4-year college or they're gonna go to Capito IDEA. Capito IDEA is huge because it is free, and our students who cannot or do not want to go to 4-year college can go to 2-year college for free and get all expenses paid, and their scholarship money, they can live off of that. So that after that, what I've heard from some alumni from Capito IDEA, that once they did that, then they said, oh, I want to go ahead and go to get my bachelor's. So, you know, I think we're at the point, I think, where we need to go deeper in how we integrate what we're already investing in, so that we can see the fruits of all that work that's been there. But it's kind of been on a standalone. The same thing with Prime Time and the PSS work. So I just wanted to share that's something that this year, and I'm glad Ms. Howard is here because AISD is now hiring over 50 students this summer through some youth employment. And so, you know, and it's helping again. And the beauty of it is the Ms. Fannin, who's going to be overseeing, is doing individual meetings with every student so that they know where they are academically and how this work, you know, just checking in to see how their job experience is really going to help energize them to develop that thrive for the next school year, right? So I just want to tell you, that's really exciting for me to see that happening, and if we can continue to grow that and begin thinking deep in everything that we already partnered in, to see how we can, again, expand and make bigger things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zapata. Councilmember Alter?
Very where I was largely where I was going to go, but that some of these things that normally we wouldn't think of as connected, thinking workforce and your after school or summer camps, right? Especially at the older ages where you could have either after school programs that are some form of development or just exposure to various areas. The easy one is, our need for lifeguards, right? If they go from school to go be lifeguards, that's great for the city of Austin. But, if there are either summer opportunities or after-school opportunities to go even be exposed to whatever the various departments, I think of the things, the engineering, all the engineering things. We have positions from our water utility to our electric utility to some of the other things that we can tie opportunities and kind of two birds with one stone situation.
Love that. Did you have something to add?
I wanted to talk about the sustainability questions, because I think there's some real opportunities for us to make sure there's knowledge across the organizations of the different sustainability efforts that we're doing, and then information I think we may need as a city to know how we can be more supportive and know what the hurdles are. I know that I had a lot of conversations with Commissioner Shea about Purple Pipe for reclaimed water. But the work that we're doing with respect to solar energy rebates, but just generally there are programs that you guys may be doing that we may not be aware of that we might want to adopt, that I think we could be exploring more. The work that you guys are trying to do with the electric buses, we need to make sure that Austin Energy is prepared to support that. I think there's some opportunities there that we could really consider, because we are such large landholders in the community. We have our own facilities. We can demonstrate how things work. There may be, other Purple Pipe or water reclamation projects that could be done, within a school setting on the properties as you're going. I think there are just some opportunities for collaboration that I'd like to see us discuss and consider.
Love that. Yes.
Yeah, just building on that, because you mentioned a number of things that are really where we have overlapping either programs or interests, and I don't know that we have a good mechanism for even knowing what those are. And my colleague Jeff Trevelyan is frequently talking about asset maps, but it might be a useful exercise to just somehow try and capture what those are, because we've directed our transportation staff to pursue a transition to electric vehicles for all of our fleet vehicles and even our law enforcement vehicles as the battery life and cost issues, balance out. And that's going to mean we'll have a greater need for charging infrastructure. And there's a lot of opportunities with the federal legislation that the Democrats passed, I'll just say, and providing a tremendous amount of funding for those kinds of things. But it's really valuable for us to understand what's going on in each of our respective jurisdictions. But one of the things that strikes me that is an over kind of umbrella impact to all of us is the impacts of climate change. When Mara hit, it affected everybody. And I thought AIS did a great job updating parents, keeping people informed about what was going on with the schools, so that people knew if they had to come get their kids early or would not be able to bring their kids to school the next day or the following days. So it affects all of us, and it presents as an emergency on our doorstep every time it happens. And I just think that, and I really appreciate the work that's been done on the resilience hubs. And I think we should spend more time. We have that as a written thing that we can look at and ask questions if we have it. But I think there's more that we can do on the preparedness side. When I took office, I started looking at programs out there that we might be able to piggyback on. And the closest thing I could find was what they do in Japan to prepare communities for the impact of earthquakes and tsunamis, which are frequent and deadly there, but very few Japanese die from them because they all know what to do. And the instruction for any of our State Department people is follow what the Japanese do. They didn't even bother trying to give them separate, training or instruction. So, and part of it is because they start in school, and school children on up all know what to do. So I think that's the kind of thing that we are going to have to start looking at, because we will have more and more disastrous weather impacts with greater frequency. We won't be able to predict what each one of them is, but if there's a commitment to some level of preparedness that the community is taught or is made aware of, so that people can be better prepared when there will be the inevitable impacts from extreme weather. And I just think there's so many applications there, but it's something we all have to deal with. It doesn't distinguish between a city or a county or a school district, and it's an emergency when it happens, so we have to drop everything else we're doing to deal with that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, these standardized protocols can be life-saving.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Well, thank you. So I'm going to shift a little bit. So thank you guys for doing this, and what we can do is capture this in a document, and maybe at the next meeting or between now and the next meeting, we'll continue to refine this and think about where we want to be spending our time as a group. In addition to the topics, what I heard from hearing you all is like there's sort of different levels of ownership that this JSC would have on whatever it is, whatever work it is we do. I feel like just in the few meetings that I've participated in, they've been really helpful in different ways. So one level that I see us sort of interacting or helping each other on is just basically like informing each other, like, hey, this is what's going on, in the city, or here's something that's happening, in the district. I want to put this on your radar just as a courtesy, and that type of thing. But then there might be categories of support we can offer each other, or we're just asking for help on a very specific initiative. So for example, you're going to be hearing some stuff later today about what's happening in the district, and there might be a specific ask for help with supporting one of our middle schools, and that type of thing. So I kind of feel like that could be a really useful way for all of us to just sort of be working together. And then there's this other category where we might create like our own, like if there's one or two things from this list that really emerge as super important, whether it's, environmental sustainability or some other thing, that it's kind of like our own sort of project where we're all sort of putting our puzzle pieces together, sort of like we do with the resilience hubs or, things like that. So I kind of think of that as due.
Artie?
Yes.
I think it's a great idea. Maybe what we can do is get all of the categories that are listed and send them to everybody to
Yes.
identify investments that we have made in those areas to determine where we are aligned and to see if we can do something together.
Love that. And so that's kind of like the asset, I'll just use the term that I heard. It's kind of like the asset mapping, the investments, where can we kind of, and I think that would apply probably to several of these, mostly with this category or that category. But does that sound like a good roadmap for us going forward? Is there anything that you guys, any suggestions, ideas?
I think it would really help just focus us and give us a better sense of where there are opportunities that we may not be aware of now.
Okay, good. So, yes.
I think it's a great framework for us to be thinking through, and I do want to add that I'm not sure that all of the do work happens within the framework of the committee. I thought it was very useful when we had the subcommittee of the subcommittee.
That's right.
For childcare, and I'd be happy to work on that one again. But I think that a lot of the work happens not in this meeting if we're actually gonna be moving the needle. I think one of the challenges we've had in the past is that we have come to rely on staff to come forward with trying to figure out what it is we want to know without giving them very much guidance. And so I think as we're working and we're making this committee function at its optimum so that we can get the most out of our time here, we are also going to have to think about having those committees, or having the three of us meeting periodically to say, okay, this is what should be on the agenda, working with staff so that it's not as much guesswork on their part as to what we want, or taking one comment that was one sentence and trying to figure out what a presentation looks like. That also makes a lot of work for the staff, and it doesn't give them clear direction as to what it is that we want. And I think we can be mindful. We have great staff who are coming to these meetings, and hopefully these meetings are also an opportunity for them to connect over issues. But we should be using those resources to the maximum.
Agreed. Yes.
I fully agree, and I think maybe we take it a step further by putting a form together that allows us to describe the background and describe the objectives so that we can really explain what it is we're after, so that hopefully the result of that type of request would be a basic project plan. Just
Yes.
if we were going to do this, we would have to do A, B, C, D. This is not something that we own the data for. The data is owned here. It's gathered every 90 days so that we have clarity about what the idea is and what we want, what the objectives are and what we want the outcomes to be. But then we give them the information that's necessary to put a plan together that we would look at and say, that's kind of what I'm looking for, or not so much.
I love that. Yes, thank you. So we'll capture this. We'll try to put something together for you all to respond to and continue working on as we refine this. And Trustee Zapata, one last comment.
So as you draft this and put it in category, maybe we could all be thinking about which committee, to be on, and note it on there, so then we can begin having those subcommittees. I agree, that's where the real work needs to happen, and I think those committees could create their goals. I don't know, we have to have a scripted goal criteria, but that every committee is going to be different, so each committee could really work on what those goals are and how they want to reach it, and bring it back to everybody else to see what, where people are. But I think I'd like to move on stuff. I don't like to, let's read and let's wait
Sure.
in 3 months, I want to see movement. I want to see action. And so I'd just like to
Understood.
add that part, that people sign up to the committee that they're most interested in.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll, I'm looking at Councilmember Alter and Commissioner Shea, so we have a little bit of work to do in figuring out a good next step, but we'll keep everyone informed on that. So thank you all for this. Always fun to do things with Post-its, right, Trustee Lugo? She taught me this approach. We use it like in 90% of our meetings, I think, but it's been very helpful. So next, we are going to talk about a topic that I think is really near and dear to every single one of us. And I'm just so excited because Kathy McHorse is somebody who I've come to rely on as an expert. And I will often text her during meetings and be like, hey, can you tell me this, or give me this statistic? So today we have Kathy McHorse here to give us really the scoop on childcare needs in Austin. There's also a workforce lens to this that's really important. And so Kathy McHorse is the Vice President of Success by 6, which is part of the United Way for Greater Austin. And I believe she might be getting her presentation up. So we're very excited to have her here today with us. By the way, I believe you all got an email that had a little video. That did go out, right? Okay, so I don't know if you all had a chance to watch that, but I thought it was Very well done, and look forward to hearing more. So thanks. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today, and again, a thanks to county commissioners for your vote yesterday. It's one-time funds. We have it. I got it. Thank you for that. And thanks for the opportunity to share today. I wanted to start with a little bit of level setting about the early care and education ecosystem. And if you could go to the next slide. Just for context, we do have a robust community-wide coalition, the Success by Six Coalition, that has been convening since 2012 to advance goals around early care and education and the full ecosystem of the early childhood sector in our community. And you can see the organizations listed on the far side. Those organizations have representation on the leadership team of the coalition and help shepherd and govern the strategic plan moving forward. And we work to align resources within our community across the city, county, and school districts to advance the goals of the strategic plan. The first plan was launched in 2012. Prior to the pandemic, some of the results that we've seen in our community were increasing school readiness by 10 percentage points over 5 years. We helped launch the pre-K3 program in Austin ISD with public-private partnerships, with philanthropy, setting up the classrooms, and then leveraging state funds to open them, and that expanded into a full pre-K3 program. We've city and county have tripled their investment per low-income child since 2012, and we have one of the highest percentages of high-quality early care and education programs in the state. Next slide. However, just some stark statistics for you to keep in mind. 28% of the children under age 6 in Travis County live in households experiencing low income. That's about 200% of the federal poverty level. That's 25,000 children under age 6, and 90% of those are children of color. So we have a far way to go. The next slide shows a snapshot of the framework of our strategic plan, thinking about what do children need in their first 5 years to enter school happy, healthy, and ready to succeed. They need healthy beginnings, adequate health and mental health care for themselves and their caregivers, supportive families, parents that have experience, education, opportunities, resources to be their child's first and best caregiver, high-quality care and education settings when parents are at work, and then a safe and stimulating community, things like parks and libraries that are equipped to meet the needs specifically of families with young children. In our context, babies are born learning. Children do not begin learning when they enter school. They are born learning, and whatever environment they're in, that is an early childhood learning environment, and we want all of those places and spaces where children are cared for to have the resources and supports and connections needed to provide high-quality experiences that nurture that child's development. And you can see on this slide, we work with organizations in the coalition and bring together groups like Any Baby Can, Avance, Communities and Schools Aspire program, more of a two-gen flavor of programs that do home visiting or group setting work where moms and dads and children are together and being supported. And then in high-quality care and education, we think about the different settings like pre-K, Head Start, and childcare. And all of those receive some element of funded dollars, very different kinds of resources, and have different eligibility requirements. And it's important to understand the interplay of these, because if we build out one sector of this ecosystem without adequately supporting another, it has unintended consequences. So next slide. A snapshot of pre-K in our region. 80% of eligible children are enrolling in pre-K 4. So we have full-day pre-K for 4-year-olds, and we know as far as the children who are potentially eligible to be enrolled, we're doing a pretty good job. Those kiddos are in the classrooms.
Does pre-K 4 mean starting at age 4? Okay.
Yeah, 4 by September 1st of the school year. And there is state funding for any student who turns 4 by September 1st. They are allocated state funding and have to be enrolled in a pre-K program. And they're, with House Bill 3, the early ed allotment was intended to help support the cost for full-day pre-K. We know there are lots of asks on that early ed allotment. But when we look at pre-K 3, or pre-K for 3-year-olds by September 1st, we have only 22% of eligible children enrolled. And we think for most case, a lot of that is because it's not a full-day program. It's a half-day program. If you're a working parent, drop off at, 8 o'clock, pick up at 11:30, that doesn't work, and then you still have to piecemeal childcare for the rest of the day. However, thankfully, AISD does have a mechanism through pre-K partnerships and partnerships with Head Start and child care centers that we can blend funding to create a full-day program. And in pre-K partnerships, and just want to acknowledge John Green Otero and my director, Madison Mattice, who lead this work. We have 18 child care centers across the community that provide that full-day wraparound, drop-off, pick-up. We blend and braid child care subsidy money and pre-K money, and parents have that opportunity to be dropped off in the morning, picked up, but they have the pre-K curriculum from AISD and AISD pre-K experience.
Are those
Kath?
in conjunction with AISD or other school districts, or are they separate?
It is in conjunction with AISD. The students are technically AISD students. They count towards AISD enrollment.
So there's 18 school facilities that have the full day for 3.
There's 16 centers in Austin, and we're partnering in Round Rock ISD as well, in 2 schools.
Kathy, if I could just add here, so the pre-K 3 enrollment is one of the areas that I think would be ripe for a child care subcommittee to be looking at to see how we could mobilize the 3 entities to help increase that. Now, we have to be careful when we do that because it has implications for the rest of the child care system, so it's not a thing you can do sort of in isolation, but it is an area where I think working together and even just raising the opportunity and with more voices could be helpful.
Thanks so much.
If I could, an area of particular focus for me here is the Title I environment, and as close to free as possible, because many communities, affordability is not an issue. But when we look at where our low performance is happening, it is almost geographic. And so it's important to focus on building the type of system that the Austin Project built, that AV's working on now. How do you focus on the resources in an area and identify, map them,
Right.
so that people can get all of the things that they need to be successful, but that we work in those environments where ultimately you get a huge bang for the buck.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'll keep going because I know we don't have a lot of time, but next slide. Again, this snapshot in our Head Start is federally funded. It's allocated to both, AIC gets a portion of Head Start seats, about 200, and Child Inc. has the majority of the seats allocated. They have about 1,200 seats combined between early Head Start, birth to 3, and Head Start 3 to 4-year-olds. They are under-enrolled this year because they can't hire sufficient staff to use up all their seats, to fill all their seats. So there's funding being left on the table, unfortunately, for that. And then we have child care scholarships or subsidies. We're trying to change and call them scholarships because it's more of a strengths-based approach. Travis County, through Workforce Solutions, the City of Austin and Travis County, the child care subsidy program is managed by Workforce Solutions. They're allocated a target of 3,057 children per day with the funding they receive from the state. That's birth to 13. And remember, we have 25,000 young children under age 6 living in low-income households. When we look at the distribution of child care subsidies, just the result of how referrals are made and placed, fewer than 1,000 infants and toddlers are enrolled on an average day in our subsidized child care program. Right now, we have 1,345 children on the subsidy waiting list. 930 of those are children under age 3. So when we look at the biggest gap of need, it is in the infant toddler space. It's also important, if you did watch the video, thank you, pre-K expansion without stabilizing the infant, toddler, childcare sector unintentionally destabilizes the whole system, because childcare programs pay for the costs of their infants and toddlers by covering those costs with the tuition or subsidy they pull in for the pre-K students, because they can have more children in those classrooms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you just say why, if they're funding over 3,000 slots per day, that they have fewer than 1,000 using it?
Just fewer than 1,000 infants and toddlers, and part of that is we have limited seats for infants. Programs can't afford to offer childcare for infants at the subsidy reimbursement rate. And so they'll accept preschoolers or after-school childcare, but they won't accept infants because it doesn't work with their business model. We also are finding a lot of programs are closing their infant classrooms because they can't staff, and those are the expensive classrooms to open.
So, I don't want to take up too much.
They're filled, yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
what I
sorry.
didn't understand, but
Thanks,
only
Loris.
1,000 of them are.
There are only 1,000 are utilizing or supporting infants and toddlers. The rest are supporting children older 3 through 13.
Okay, it'd be good to have a breakdown of the 25,000, because that's 6 and under.
Yeah.
So I don't have a sense of the size of those populations.
I can get that for you. Thanks. And just for clarity, pre-K eligibility is 185% of the federal poverty level. Head Start is 100% of the federal poverty level. And child care subsidies is 85% of state median income. So if you're a parent of a 3-year-old, may the odds be ever in your favor in navigating that system. Unfortunately, it's just how we operate in Texas. Next slide. Again, just pointing, we have a massive problem with childcare in our state, and I do think of that as high-quality early care and education. It can be high quality if sufficiently resourced. This state is not investing, and we have really poor standards for childcare generally, but in our community, we've worked together to elevate those. If you go to the next slide, the childcare system has been deemed a market failure. High-quality infant care can cost over $20,000 a year. It costs more than tuition at UT for almost all child care in our region, and most families cannot pay the true cost of care. What happens is we compress the teachers' wages, and we provide care on the back of the workforce in the child care sector. We have really high turnover in this sector, and we estimate that the loss of those programs who are, for every child they enroll that is supported by a child care subsidy, if they're maintaining high quality standards, they're losing between $3,000 to $5,000 per child per year based on the insufficient reimbursement rates. Next slide. Just a little more about the market failure. They operate on a 1% profit margin, most child care programs. We've been seeing a consistent reduction in just the number of seats across the region. That means programs that are willing to accept children supported by subsidies. And then when we look at like where's the room to move things around within the child care business model, 60 to 80% of their costs go to wages. And then another 20 to 40% goes to occupancy. So they're paying rent or they're paying mortgage, they pay property taxes, utilities, et cetera. This is an opportunity for co-locations using existing assets, public facilities, et cetera. And it's a particularly hard problem in Austin right now, as you can imagine. The next slide just shows a little bit about what's happening with the workforce. We know there's a terrible crisis of a teacher workforce. I would say the child care staffing crisis is that teacher workforce crisis on steroids. If you go to the next slide. Only 1 out of 10 early childhood educators earns a living wage. Average wages in Austin are $12 to $13 an hour. And nearly every child care program is having trouble finding sufficient staff. That means they shrink hours, they close infant toddler classrooms, they don't operate the hours that working families truly need. And next slide, we know that we're ignoring long-term outcomes from this. There have been several reports recently about the economic impact of lack of affordable childcare on our workforce, which y'all were talking about. Employer productivity, sales tax revenue, workforce participation, all of these could increase if we had sufficient access to high-quality care. And it must be resourced to provide high-quality care. You can't expect quality without paying for it. The next slide is similar, just a little bit about workforce participation, so I don't want to spend too much longer on that. And then the last two slides, if we can flip through relatively quickly, are just documented pieces of information we have about the strong return on investment if we do invest early. We have the least amount of public funding in the first 5 years, which has the most significant period of brain development. And if we don't pay up front, this last slide indicates how we pay more later. We have to invest more in retention, in interventions, in special education, and later on things like involvement with the justice system, et cetera, instead of workforce participation. That was your Child Care 101 speed round. Yes.
So I know that the ARPA funds back in 2021 were made available to all states, and I don't know, sometime earlier this calendar year, actually no, last year, I had reached out to some folks at TWC to try to find out how did Texas invest those dollars. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the punchline, Commissioner Shea got to it. But what can y'all do here in our Central Texas region?
So there's the difference between the state and the central. The state has done a lot of stabilization. They shared out stabilization grants. They've had short-term increases in the subsidy reimbursement rates. Those are all coming to an end. And we weren't in a great place for childcare before the pandemic. So anything that was invested through the pandemic recovery funds is really just trying to get us back to where we were, which isn't where we need to be. Local investments have been incredibly helpful in building out things like the pre-K partnerships that can leverage the state education revenue into the childcare sector, trying to strengthen the business model of our childcare programs, and trying to begin really working more intentionally, explicitly with the family-based providers who are often left out and disconnected from local resources and supports.
All right. And then I know there's also CRRSA funds. I forget how to spell the acronym, but it's like CRRSA, I think. And those are, rather than being stabilization funds, some states, I don't know about Texas, but some states are using them to encourage longer-term workforce investments, like specifically in childcare and early childcare. So not sure to what extent, our region can access those dollars. I completely understand, it's difference between the state and the local, but, sometimes magic can happen.
I'm not familiar with the CRRSA funds at this point, but I'm happy to look into it. Lawrence, I don't know if you're familiar with those.
So, I would say just really briefly, there's like student loan forgiveness for childcare workers, and also incentives for just being a child care worker, especially in child care deserts. So again, I understand, right, there's certain things that would be applicable, certain things that wouldn't be. The other thing I wanted to just briefly mention, so not really a question, but more of a comment, is, when I think about child care, so I got 3 kids, right? 12, 9, 5. And I was so happy when my youngest entered pre-K 4. It was like getting a raise. Yeah, really. So all of that to say, the other thing that comes to mind is not just the affordability and the partnerships and kind of looking at, when you move one domino, what else falls. But really looking at some opportunities, you know, the co-location, and on top of that, looking at, you know, multi-generational impacts. So I think, you know, the abuelas, the tias, the, you know, individuals who might have retired from work but want to have another career, right? And like, how amazing and powerful is that when you've got cross-generational interaction, both all folks benefit from that. And then along those same lines, the partnerships that currently exist to help parents and current caregivers and connecting them to or receiving them from workforce development. I mean, I think that's huge. And the last thing I'll say is, the sooner we can get kiddos into AISD and really have them become part of the AISD family, the better. And I think that's the other thing I would love to see is really having our city, not that this hasn't already taken place, but maybe just more overt, a more overt embracing of AISD as part and parcel of the city, right? Like, what is the identity of our city? You know, quality childcare through AISD, right? Like, there's lots of ways that we can do that and really promote that. So,
Yeah. Thank you, Trustee Lugo. I think we have time for about one more comment. Commissioner Shea.
I know there's been some talk about a ballot initiative. I don't know at what point it makes sense for us to be briefed on that, but it's clear we have to find additional sources of funding. And I don't know if y'all have done this analysis, because you've done such phenomenal analysis on so many aspects of this, but I'd be interested to know how other countries fund it. I mean, we hear so much about how European countries have excellent child care programs that the state funds, you know, or somehow they're funded. It'd be really interesting to just understand how they do that and what the costs are, because we clearly don't have good working models, and it would be good to know what some of those are. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I have some of the information on the international models, and also would note that they have often more robust paid family leave that reduces the stress for infant care and the cost of infant care. So that can also be a lever. But I'm happy to bring that information back. I will say, currently underway is a project with the Children's Funding Project doing cost modeling and fiscal mapping, so that if we are asked, what would it take in Austin so that we had funds for every child up through age 4 for high quality early care and education, what would that cost be? And what's the gap from what we currently have? I can promise you it's a huge number. It is $100 million annually. It's a big number, but that's the work that we have some staff and programs working on right now to try and just have that answer for our community.
And then that asset mapping would be really important, because I've heard directly from Workforce Solutions, they spend $54 million a year currently on childcare, and I was floored when I heard that, because I didn't have a sense that we were getting anywhere close to addressing our childcare needs, and I'm just astonished that they're spending that amount of money on childcare. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just, when we say an asset map, what we've been trying to do is identify all of the programming, wherever it is, and whether the dollars are federal, state, or local, just to have an idea of what's being, what we're serving, but then also where the gaps are, so that we can place our focus there. We did that with the Food Policy Council, the Food Network, and it was a very instructive document that led us to make more investment in food access.
Well, I also didn't hear, maybe I missed it, about our teen moms. You know, how are they getting support? And, you know, if y'all have any information on that later, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
They are a priority group for workforce.
That's great.
Subsidies, so.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Ms.
thank you.
McCourse. This was wonderful. There's clearly a lot of interest. I want to take a quick second to make sure all your colleagues were introduced. Would you all mind introducing yourselves? And then if there are other folks working from AISD or the city involved in childcare, Could you just stand up and introduce yourself quickly?
Madison Tyson, the director of BK Partnerships for United Way for Greater Austin. So I get to work with John's team in the public department.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Hilda, and I'm a planner in the Research and Planning Division with Travis County Health and Human Services. And my focus is on early care education.
Wonderful.
I'm Lawrence Long, Director of Research and Planning for Travis County HHS.
Thank you.
I'm Josh Legend, I'm the Executive Director of School Programs with Austin ISD.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Margarell. I'm the third base director for Austin ISD, which is an after-school program that is going to be centralized in the district.
Fantastic.
He's finding the space.
I'm Jeremy Strickler, I'm Director of Real Estate for the Austin School District.
And you're finding the space for co-location? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Enthusiasm, yo.
Well, we're not finding
That's
space.
exciting. I think that's exciting.
We put out a public RFP for the former Keys Elementary to make that a child.
That's right. Thank you.
But if you're looking for other space, the county has a partnership with numerous multifamily developers that are developing somewhat large-scale sites that are tax exempt, so any of the common space they have is not taxed.
Further introductions.
John, I'm Director of Enrollment for Austin ISD. I oversee general pre-K, K through 4, our Head Start program, and part of our visiting.
Wonderful.
I am Susie Bialfado. I'm Assistant Superintendent. I work with student programs, of which early learning is one of those.
Thank you.
Marilyn Jackson with Travis County. I'm Pilar Santos, Executive Assistant.
Oh, wonderful. All right, did we get everybody? All right, well, this is a good, thank you again. We really appreciate this. You can see this is something that we all, I think, are very passionate about, and you've given us a good start in this, or continuation in this direction. So next we're going to move on to some talk about AISD, and we have with us our interim superintendent, Matias Segura. And he's going to talk to us about the Texas Education Agency and some updates around special education and Mendez Middle School.
Hello, thank you. I didn't realize I had a place to sit here. I appreciate that. Well, good evening or good afternoon, trustees, commissioners, city council members. Very much appreciate the opportunity to provide an update regarding special education services, our current engagement with TEA, as well as an update regarding Mendez Middle School. And so, as we move to the next slide, the first thing I'd like to communicate to you all is that when I first came on board, it was clear to me that special education services and improving the services for our students was priority 1A. It's something that the system as a whole needed to acknowledge, and really embrace the challenge that we had in front of us. And so I'll tell you, since the first day that I started in this role, that has consumed a significant amount of my time. But we've, over the period of 3 months, really done an incredible amount of work, and we're well positioned to do a lot of great things moving forward. As we move to the next slide, one of the things that I want y'all to know is that the challenges that have faced AISD regarding special education services is not new. We've had these challenges. They've shown themselves in a variety of ways for several years now, really going back to 2018, 2019, and others would argue well before that. And so as we talk specifically around the engagement with TEA, I do want to point out that there have been multiple notifications, updates, investigations over the last several years, and all of that work, however, hasn't quite gotten us to where we need to be. And so as we embark on this next engagement with TEA, it's certainly important to note that a lot of things have occurred, and for the state and for us as well, this is not coming out of nowhere. I know for a lot of our community members, a lot of our stakeholders, it felt like it was new and maybe out of nowhere, but certainly it's something we've been working on for quite some time. So as we transition to the next slide, I do want to point out that because of the renewed focus that we have at AISD regarding special education services, we've done a tremendous amount of things in a very short period of time. I do want to acknowledge some previous actions. Just going back to May of 2022, one of the things that we did was commissioned an audit, an assessment by Dr. Stetson, I would say world-renowned, but definitely internationally known special education expert. And she was able to identify recommendations that would really help improve the system. And from that point, we made some structural changes, including adjustments to leadership, to ensure that the work really aligned with the structure within AISD. I would argue prior to that, there were bottlenecks, there were challenges that we had, which is keeping information and the systems flowing the way they needed to. One of the things that I think is most impactful to the work was actually the election of the new board. We had new board members come on in November, elected in November, and then came on late December and into January. And at that point, not that there wasn't previously, but there was a kind of a refocusing regarding special education services and a clear alignment between the administration and the board as to what needed to happen. And so in December of 2022, the board, if we go to the next slide, the board did move forward with identifying me for the interim role. And I think one of the things that's worth noting here is, as y'all know, I've worked with just about every one of y'all. I am a non-traditional. My expertise is in systems. It's in identifying strategies to address the most complicated issues an entity may face. That's just the world that I've lived in my entire career, and this is no different. So we have a unique opportunity here. And so as I said, once I came on board, it was clear what the focus was of the organization. Again, we have others, right? We have other focus areas, whether it's multilingual education, climate and culture, budget priorities. But I keep on telling our team, like, special education services is truly 1A above all else. The board established an ad hoc committee, which I think is important to note. When you think about getting alignment between the board and the administration, it's important to have that touch point. Right now we have the information sessions and we have the board meetings, but really to be aligned, we need to have like constant communication, and we need to make sure that they're understanding the recommendations, because we are moving forward very aggressively. I also want to point out that in a very short period of time, we've been able to develop a comprehensive strategy around special education services, acknowledging that it's not just the students that receive these services, it's the entire academic system that really needs to be improved. And we can talk about that in detail maybe in the Q&A portion of the conversation. And also acknowledging that this is something that we all share as a system, as AISD, finance, operations, procurement. No one is good unless special education services are good, and we're doing what we need to be doing for our students. And I think creating that expectation for our system is important, and we've done a lot in a very short period of time, including developing a dashboard which allows our school communities, our principals and executive directors to understand where each of our students are within a process. And you can think about planning purposes, right? We have evaluations, we have ARDs, we have all these things that we have to do, but understanding where each student is in that process is incredibly important. And up until very recently, we didn't have the tools to do that. So very excited about the work we've done, but there is a long way to go. So as we transition to the next slide, I do want to point out some things that are within the TEA current recommendation and kind of what that means. As y'all know, several weeks back, we received a letter from TEA stating that conservators were being recommended for placement within the special education department. I want to be very clear, that's not over the board, it's not over the superintendent, it's not over governance or procurement or finance, it's specifically over special education department. This is important because I believe our community responded noting kind of what's occurring right now in Houston. Yeah. And it is terrifying, and so the board, aligned with the administration, was putting out communication around what this is and what it isn't. I will tell you, in our response to TEA regarding the initial findings, we were proposing a monitor, which is different. A monitor is someone that kind of looks over your shoulders, is a collaborator with you, but ultimately doesn't have a binding decision-making authority. A conservator does. And so right now we are in the process of working through this with TEA. I suspect ultimately wherever we land, it'll occur sometime in midsummer. The board and the administration have been aligned at every step along the way. So I think it's important to note that we are very much aligned. We communicate constantly, and we're also communicating to our larger community on a more frequent basis and more transparent and in a transparent way. It's something that I don't know has been done in that way for quite some time. So it's just important to continue to reinforce that. On the next slide, I think it's important to talk about some of the challenges we've had and some of the progress we've made. I do want to take a moment here and describe one of the kind of foundational challenges that we have. And one of them is that we use LSSPs and diagnosticians to do the evaluations for our students receiving, or maybe our students that have been identified as potentially receiving special education services. We have 75 positions in Austin ISD, right? Currently, right now, we have 24 filled. And so, as you can imagine, with the number of students that we have, the pandemic and the slowdown in evaluations, coupled with the fact that we're seeing an increase in students being moved into this process, and there's conversations around that, we're not able to keep up with the load. One thing I also want to point out is in Central Texas, there's only 256 licensed LSPs and diagnosticians. So we have to essentially take on and compete for a substantial portion of the available LSPs and diagnosticians, which means we have to be incredibly aggressive. Another thing I want to point out is we have been moving very aggressively through our evaluations. You can see here some of the numbers. We've done 4,000 since May of 2022 and over 8,000 since last year. So we have been developing the system and moving the system to be able to move through this, but we still have a good amount of work to do. I do tell the trustees that, in all honesty, this is not a 6-month challenge. This is not a year challenge. This is an 18 to 24-month initiative that we have to go through to be where we want to be, but we're well positioned to do it. On the next slide, just so that y'all have a sense of what we're talking about here, when we build up, and those of you that know me, many of y'all probably have seen these types of things from me. I am intentional about making sure everybody in the organization understands, what task is at hand, what resources are being allocated, what their role is in supporting that work. And so this is one of 9 sheets that just communicates the overall special education initiative that will occur over the next 2 years. We're wanting to be incredibly transparent, so you're seeing us post this and collaborate with our stakeholders to improve it, and it'll evolve over time. But again, my goal is to be able to communicate to anybody and prove to anybody that we can tackle this work, and I don't think there's another way that you can do it unless you go through this type of analysis. So just wanted to provide that for you.
Is there a highlight on the recovery plan? Because that's illegible.
I have a highlight, and I will send that. I didn't. Yeah, there's no way.
He is an engineer by training.
I have it on my. I have huge sheets on my board.
Can I say
Commissioner
something
Shea.
really quick about this? So, as Nolita and I, we both on the same. We love this. Okay, and this is obviously just for illustrative purposes. We don't expect you to be able to read it, but this did not exist in this district 4 months ago. And so, as trustees,
No schedule for a recovery plan?
There was no project management. Commissioner Shea, it floored me. Sorry.
Go ahead, you take it away.
I'm just so passionate about Gantt charts. Commissioner, I need all the prayer I can get.
He says that to a lot of people.
So I'm now on Commissioner Trevillion's prayer list. I will take it.
I'm on there too, I'm sure.
But I digress. Whether they know it or not. No, but I digress. In all seriousness, one of the things that's really exciting as we're working with Interim Superintendent Segura is the project management lens, the operational lens, like really looking at how each of our divisions within the district, each of the campuses, right, like looking at the interconnections and the dependencies and being realistic but ambitious about how to solve persistent or complex problems, and special education, it fits in that exact category. And so the Gantt chart that you see here, is going to be familiar to anybody who works with project management, and that's exactly what this system needs. We need a functional, purposeful way of getting the work done at a systemic level. So, I just can't tell you how much I have really just appreciated and, quite frankly, really love the way that this current administration is tackling the persistent issues that we've had.
If I could just digress for 1 second, this has been a difficult problem since integration. Because since integration, special ed has been used to remove our discipline problems and not to diagnose legitimate issues that can be addressed. And what I'm going to be interested in is, as you have broken out all of the things that need to be done and some of the costs that are associated with it, whether TEA will align itself and allow you to make changes that I don't see or have not seen in any number of school districts, because the NAACP, when I was president, sued the school district 4 times because a lot of the kids who failed the TOS exam were routed to special ed because special ed kids did not have to take the TOS exam. So if we can truly get to a point where special ed becomes diagnostic, and whether we can run a system that actually helps kids, will have a lot to do with whether TEA will receive, understand, and allow this level of analysis.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I will tell you that we are approaching this in a collaborative manner with TEA. I think the approach that we're taking is well received by them. I think in the past, for right, wrong, or indifferent, AISD would commit to milestones but not necessarily get there as time passed. And I think a lot of that was just proving up, how we actually do it. And so I feel good, but you're absolutely right. I'm telling our teams, let's disaggregate the data. Let's figure out, do our students actually need these services, or do they need tier 2 instruction, right? Do we need tier 3 instruction? Are we providing professional development for our teachers to ensure that students don't move into a process that doesn't serve them? And so all of that's where the academic aspect of it comes together. And we are pushing quite aggressively. As you move on to the next slide, just a couple points of where we're going. We're going to continue to provide updates. Recruitment is absolutely critical for us. We're working with the board right now to develop an aggressive compensation package. You will see in it, once delivered, that it is hyper-focused on attracting the resources we need to complete this work. If you can imagine, attracting, 35% of the actual available, group of people, you have to be competitive, right? And so we're moving through it. I will tell you that we're making adjustments and refining. We are continuing to provide updates, and as we work with TEA over the next couple of weeks, we'll have updates not only to our community, but also to all of our stakeholders, including y'all. So I will pause there. I know we need to transition to another presentation, but want to make sure there is space for any questions that you all may have regarding special education services.
Does is there essentially the effect of a death penalty for the district if you can't get out from under this penalty order or whatever it's called? Do they then take over everything if you can't meet some metric by some date?
So one of the things, yes, but many things have to occur. For us,
It's just, I think it's important for the community to know what's at stake.
Yeah, it's important.
I did not understand, for instance, with Houston, that if one school failed per a certain number of years, that the TEA could come in and take over the entire school district.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most people understand that. So I don't know what this means, that you're now under conservatorship for this program. And I don't know what the potential consequence is if you're not able to turn it around by whatever their requirements are.
So I will start, maybe President Singh, if you'd like to chime in. I would say first and foremost, we need to identify what the separation parameters are with TEA, right? So, and that's where, so what is our goal? Right now, we like TEA says we need to correct a problem. We agree. We're in agreement we need to correct this problem. But what does that mean? Does that mean 100% of evaluations in a system of this size? Well, that's not necessarily realistic. So we are commissioning an audit. It's actually a collaboration with TEA. Out of that audit will come the recommendation for the goal that we have to meet over a certain period of time. I will tell you that the time frame is generally about 2 years, and every 9 weeks the commissioner reviews kind of the progress that we've made and makes adjustments at that point. And so, over that period of time, we will get to a place where we'll be out of it. But you're right. We need to be able to communicate to our stakeholders in our communities that if we do not do this and we are not committed, there could be, at some point in the distant future, that possibility. I don't know, President Singh, if you'd like to.
Yes to all of that, and we are taking it extremely seriously. The conservatorship is just one step below a takeover, and a conservator can, as Mr. Segura mentioned, they can override any decisions we make as a board. They won't replace the board, but they can basically make decisions on any program area that impacts special education, which could be anything from facilities to HR, our budget.
It's a line item, basically, veto.
Yeah, it is, we are taking it extremely seriously, and we're kind of running out of time, but I do want to address the issue that you just brought up is very relevant to the next topic, which is Mendez. And thank you, Councilwoman Fuentes, for being here because that lies in your district, but it's a school that belongs to all of us. And if you don't mind, let's switch over to that topic because that one's just as urgent.
All right. So wanted to provide a brief update regarding Mendez Middle School. If we could go to the next slide. I just want to provide a brief history of Mendez Middle School and some of the challenges that the school community has faced over the last several years. So going back to 2013, you can see the enrollment of 886 and the MET standard. So, the state of Texas through TEA has different standards that they review and update ever so often. We're actually going through a revision right now. So the MET standard rating was an acceptable rating at that time. So we go back to 2013 because that was the last time that we feel as though Mendez was a stable school community with a rating that we all, can acknowledge and appreciate. So from 2014 to 2016, you can see we saw a reduction in enrollment. Through the testing at that time, the state testing, you can see that the improvement required was placed at Mendez 3 consecutive years, actually 5 consecutive years through 2018. The enrollment continued to decline. Until 2018, we were at 646 students. I know many of you all have seen Mendez. Many of you all probably even been in Mendez. It's quite a large campus, middle school-wise, and so you can imagine what a reduction in enrollment would feel like at that campus. In 2018, the state of Texas and AISD engaged in a partnership. This was in an effort to kind of pull Mendez back to a stable place, accountability-wise. It was mandated, correct. Well, yes, it was mandated. For lack of a better term, it was mandated. In 2019, the accountability rating was then F at 606. And as you move to the next couple slides, I'm not sure who's controlling the slides.
It got worse under the charter school that you were required to bring in by TEA generally?
So I would say that partnership was not the actual formal required partnership. I think AISD at the time engaged with a partner, kind of identified this was a likelihood. So it wasn't, I would say, mandated by TA, which is why you saw me pause there. It was kind of a foregone conclusion that we would get there. So we, at that time, kind of initiated it. So it wasn't TEA saying this. It was, hey, we need to go get a partner and help us out, is essentially what happened. Now, here as we move to the next slide, you will see in 2020, not rated, go back, we could go back real fast. Okay. 616 enrollment, 2021, 573. If you recall, this is due to COVID, the pandemic. The state of Texas, the commissioner, TEA, identified not rated campuses as campuses that would have likely received a D or F. So one of the things that's important to note is through this time, we did have that partner in place. In December of 2021, so about 2.5 years ago, the board voted to terminate its partnership with the STEM Coalition. So at that point, we had a partner, right, that where they had the control over the the staff, the principal, the way that they instructed, all of that was theirs. AIC had very little influence, if any, into kind of the culture and climate of that campus. At that time, AISD, I think, acknowledged that the partnership was not moving in the direction that we'd hoped, and the agreement with that coalition was terminated. And so shortly thereafter, in March of 2022, which is just a year ago, AISD then entered a new partnership with Third Futures. And I think what's important to note here that's not included on the slide is because we engaged with a new partner, we actually received an additional year. So you'll see here in the next slide, we're not quite ready to move there yet, but in the next slide you'll see that that next year does have an impact on where we are today. So the partnership was executed in 2022. Their leadership came on. We, at that point also, made the decision to move sixth grade out of Mendez. I'm not sure how many of y'all are aware of this, but at the end of last year, the decision was made by the administration to pull out sixth grade from both Mendez and Martin, and those students remained at the elementary schools where they attended fifth grade. Now, there's some nuance to that, but generally speaking, they stayed at their home campuses. So fast forward to 2022, 2023, which is this year, our partnership with Third Futures is in place. They are working with the students, and they are moving towards an accountability rating of C or better. That's the goal, right? And that would effectively break the chain because on the next slide, if you could move to the next slide, you can see, as President Singh mentioned, that there are steps along the way, year by year, that if Mendez Middle School does not meet accountability or improve, or action isn't taken by the board, a school of managers could be placed, or a conservator could be placed, or the school could be identified for closure. All of these things are up for consideration if we don't get Mendez back on track. And so this is a very good slide. I think it helps communicate kind of, the accountability, the break, and the chain, and then what occurs at each step based on, where we are and who has what authority to do what. I would say as of right now, AISD has limited opportunity to engage with the school community. So I would say that with Third Futures, because we have a contract, we don't have the ability to I would say, dictate the way that instruction occurs at Mendez. We allow them the space because that's part of the agreement, and the agreement had to be reviewed and approved by TEA to do what they think is best. And so they provide updates to the board. There was one that was provided just last month. There'll be one again in June. And so for us, we're always taking information and trying to determine, what the best steps are for Mendez Middle School, because those are our students. As we move forward to the next slide, just briefly.
Can I just clarify?
Yep.
So if they are successful at the end of this year in getting a C average or better, that breaks the chain? That breaks the chain of the state being able to come in and take over?
Correct.
And is that a year-to-year thing? It doesn't reset the clock for another, 3 years in a row or something like that?
It does not. It truly breaks the chain. So if Mendez were to make a C, it would break the chain. If they make a D, then this year effectively becomes a baseline year, and then they have one additional year to make a C. So effectively, we've got 2 years to hit that mark. We are doing everything to support, them in that effort. What they want is what we want, which is to get Mendez to a stable position. So as far as Third Future Partnership, I do want to make sure it's communicated here that we are collaborating with them, and because they are our students, we acknowledge that. We want to make sure our school community understands that we're here for them. So we are working with them quite closely, and that'll continue. So as we move forward, I think there's a couple things that I'd like to point out. The first is that it's important that we develop an engagement strategy around the education plan. This is in the next slide, for Martin, Mendez, and the sixth grade students. So when I think about this area, I think about the needs of all of our students, and we need to make some significant changes if we're going to stabilize these school communities. You think about, Mendez right now with the partnership that we have. Martin has had declining enrollment. Both of them do not have sixth grade. And so all of these decisions were made in the not too distant past. We need to evaluate and determine as a community what's the best path forward for our students. And so we are looking at developing a community coalition to determine like what the long-term vision is for our students in these communities. And then that will help inform the steps the board takes along with the administration, for each of these schools. So there's a lot happening, but wanted to make sure that y'all are aware that we'll be looking to y'all as we partner. Trustee Zapata and Councilmember Fuentes have been incredible, and there's a lot more work to be done, but it's going to require all of us working together to get this where it needs to be.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask one question. I know if we could have a follow-up meeting, that'd be great, with the trustee Zapata and our at-large trustees. That would be super helpful. Thank you for this information. What additional resources might be helpful to AISD at this point, given the severe nature that we're in with Mendez Middle School? What would be most helpful at this time from the city and from the county?
So I think at this point, it would be participation in an agreement to participate to solve this for these school communities. And in my mind, that may be a resolution, because we'll have to spend resources, right? We're going to have to engage with our communities. That's going to require time. It's going to require partners. We're going to have to figure out how to get to our communities. Many of our families are working multiple jobs. They're not able to get to the schools, but we need to get to them. And we have resources, but y'all have networks that we often can't engage with, or get to, I should say. So, on the resource side, I think that's part of the planning that's going to come out of this. I think at this point, not unlike some of the things that y'all put on that table behind me or on that wall, it needs to be like a clear alignment between the City of Austin and AISD to co-plan to figure this out for this part of town. That to me would be really impactful. And so we can talk about what that might look like in a future meeting.
Thank you.
As far as funds go and things like that, I think at this point we're pretty well positioned, but we need thought partners and we need commitments to do the work.
Madam Chair, I think that it's going to be important for us to build community networks. The place where I've seen it done the best was initially through the Austin project and the work and planning that it did in the St. John project. It basically identified a whole lot of the resources and started creating meetings. Alan Weeks and his team was a part of that. I think that it is important to take the blueprint, the Austin Project AEV blueprint. Now, you might add other things to it that are community-driven, but they did a good job of identifying things that could be done. And we use that type of process with the Community Resiliency Trust as we developed an outreach plan during the pandemic. But I think that on paper and with documentation, the St. John Project really lays out how to work with community, and I would encourage that, and we're certainly willing to be helpful because a lot of the places that need the most attention are in the Eastern Crescent, and we want to be a part of the solution.
No, I appreciate that, and I think you're right. I think it is a regional approach to the work. I do speak to Alan quite a bit. Certainly appreciate the community and schools model. I think it's important to understand the whole needs of our community. So I'm right there with you, and I think that's what's going to take. I think it's something like that. That type of effort is what's going to be required to do this correctly.
And the county is a funder of the Austin Voices in Education initiative that Alan's undertaking at Webb. So I think this needs to be a running item on our committee agenda, and because if TEA comes in, and so if I'm understanding, they would take over the special ed operations if there's a continued failure, or could they take over the entire school district?
So there's two different things.
There's the special ed, and then
So
there's the
it's-
Mendez.
Yeah, with Mendez, if we continue to
Fail,
get an
yeah.
F in that school, they can take over the
The
whole
entire
district.
thing, yeah.
I think we do have an option also to close down the school and reopen it as something else. But if we assume it stays open, that's how you get to a takeover. With special education, there's not necessarily a clear path to a takeover because we haven't done the audit yet and they haven't told us yet what we're going to be accountable for. But we ourselves are holding ourselves accountable to certain
Yeah.
things, but we don't know yet what TEA is going to bring to us.
I think there's a legitimate fear on the part of the community if TEA were to come in and take
For
over.
sure.
There's not alignment at all on values and on goals and on even respecting the community. So I think this needs to be on our agenda, and I think there's value in us brainstorming how else we can be of support.
Thank you. So I want to do a quick time check. We're already at 1:31, so I have not done a great job with time management in this meeting. But I wanted to, are you guys okay if we have 5 more minutes just for the whole meeting? I think we can wrap up the other stuff. But I wanted to give Trustee Zapata a moment to share since Mendez is in her district.
Sure, as you were talking about partners, AISD has been, AISD has been in a situation like this before when we were working in East Austin schools where the issue is again. And it's all that organizing work with Central Texas Interfaith and the Alliance schools. So we have history of success from Zavala being the number 64 of 64 schools that became a blue ribbon school. So, and it's all about really bringing in the community. So I know that's another resource, and they're still very strong and active in East Austin. So I just wanted to put that out there that we can be successful with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Segura.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes, Trustee Alter.
Just really quickly, thank you for bringing this up. I think this is an example of the help section of what we're trying to
SOS.
think about in terms of how we're doing things, and I appreciate you raising the issues, and appreciate Councilmember Fuentes coming. I think this is a great example of where we all need to work together to help us achieve what our community needs to thrive. So thank you.
Really appreciate that sentiment. Thank you all. So if you don't mind, I'm going to thank you, Mr. Segura. He's doing an amazing job, by the way. I have to brag. One of the main complaints TEA had, and we had about ourselves, was the backlog of evaluations. But in this school year, we've already completed 45% more evaluations than we did the entire previous school year. And we still have like 5 weeks left in this school year. And this is with like probably fewer staff. So that big Gantt chart you saw, it created efficiencies without sacrificing quality, and that's something to be proud of. So thank you. Yes, that's right. It's a great mix. Okay, so I'm going to move on very quickly. So we have a written report on resilience hubs, and I apologize that we're not going to be able to devote much time to it, but I did want to give an opportunity if anybody had any questions. The report is in your packet. Are there any questions or comments that anybody had, or if there's anyone from the staff that wanted to highlight?
I'd just like to make a request if we can, is Laura Patina going to speak? Okay, great. I'll hold my question then.
Go ahead, Laura.
Hi, joint subcommittee members. I just wanted to highlight that we've been integrating all Resilience Hub's effort into current emergency operations. The report that you see in front of you really has two major significant updates. One is a proposed funding plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that really summarize how we're going to move forward with community outreach, a community stipend fund, and really looking at the programming side of Resilience Hubs related to health and related to other planning and engagement activities for the future. The other key highlight is how that's being incorporated into emergency operations. And you will see in the proposed spend, which is on page 3 of the document, that it talks about infrastructure. And so that is where we're looking at looking to complement redundant power systems and the implementation of those. The last final comment, and I know I have to keep it super short and sweet, is just to remind the committee that resilience hubs are one tool in the toolbox that we have for an entire resilience program. And so in the coming weeks, we will be releasing the first iteration of our comprehensive resilience framework that we've developing for the past year. And so that will help bring other elements of resilience into the discussion beyond resilience hubs that were touched on earlier in this meeting today.
Thank you. Any questions for Laura?
I think as it develops further, it would be it'd be useful to have a little bit more time on it. We had set aside $1,600,000 at the county for resilience efforts. We've gotten a very rough draft proposed spending plan, and I don't know how it coordinates with this resilience hubs plan, and I don't know if that's part of the conversation that's happening among the city and the county in the school district. So that would be useful for me to have a better understanding of. And yes, what resilience hubs are not is a useful description as well, because I think a lot of people do think of them as being shelters. Maybe not overnight sleeping shelters, but day shelters. So I think a little more time in a future meeting would be valuable, also to give us a sense of where we are as a three-party entity working on this.
I appreciate that.
And just as one point, after Storm Uri, we put together an after-action report that laid out all that we did and recommendations that we have been putting in place since then. I think it's quite instructive, and it works through our emergency management team. So I would encourage you to get a copy of that and see how we can align.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Laura. Really appreciate that update.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so next we are going to the standing items. The next, basically, we have unfinished business, new business, proposed future agenda items. I think I've heard about Mendez and SPED being included on the next agenda. We can do a longer discussion on the resilience hubs and maybe next steps in some of this. I think the next meeting is going to be at the Commissioners Court, so we'll just coordinate and think about what we might want to have on that agenda. Does anybody have a comment?
Just a note for folks, because I don't know that this is being coordinated with the school district, but it seems.
Mike, please.
It seems to me it should be. The Integral Care and county staff came forward on Tuesday with a request for us to fund $270,000 in youth and child mental health crisis suicide prevention programs. It seems to me that that's a really important thing to be coordinating with the school district on, and we did vote to fund that yesterday in our ARPA allocation. So it's a new initiative. It seems like it's a true hair on fire problem. They're just extremely alarming statistics about the rates of it. And if you're not aware that it's underway, Integral Care is heading it up. Pilar, I don't know if you have any more information to add about who our key staff at the county are that are working on it, or maybe the city does, but we voted $270,000 in funding on it yesterday.
Oh, wonderful.
Right, the City of Austin Public Health is partnering with Integral Care and the county. And between the three of us, there'll be an awareness campaign. And there's also $170,000 that the county allocated towards expanding training on mental health first aid regarding youth. So that definitely is something that we'd like to partner with the AISD on.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so we'll follow up with you all on that.
So who specifically is the person that presented that item, the budget item to commissioners?
The Integral Care folks, and then Laura Pivito.
Laura Pivito at the county.
Okay.
Well, that brings up a point, if budget is something we could talk about, because we are connected through programs that we talked about earlier, and is that something that we can talk about, since we're all in that process right now?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, yes.
On budget for the parent support specialists, for a variety of reasons, and I can go into this with anyone who wants to go into detail, the level of funding is not where it was pre-COVID. The grant request that came in from AISD was lower than pre-COVID. We have put in a request that we would like it to go back up to pre-COVID levels from the city. But there are a lot of misconceptions about the origin of that program, and as I understand it, that program originated with the city, funding it.
What program is it again? I missed
Parent
it.
support specialists. But so for my colleagues in particular, I will just flag that, we have some work to do on seeing if we can increase that funding, and if that is a need that AISD has in the budget process, we need to be having those conversations early and often.
Yep.
Because we have to make sure balls are not dropped again
Yep.
on that, so that we can provide the supports to the community. But I would benefit from help from other folks in keeping that moving forward.
Do we need to talk about that before our next JSC in August?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, so, and then next, we don't have a date yet for the August meeting, correct? Okay.
No, we're polling members for August the 11th or August the 18th.
Okay.
And I think maybe you've gotten an email about that, so.
We have budget
Well,
August
you-
18th.
I know Stephanie, oh, the 25th, okay, sorry, the 25th. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
I think you all are in the middle of budget on August 11th, so.
25th is budget time for us as well at the county.
18th is budget for us.
All right. Well, I think we got through the agenda, so is there a motion to adjourn? All right. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Shea, second by Trustee Zapata, and barring any objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. It is 1:42.